Today, let's talk a bit about a serious disease afflicting most of the world, most of the developing countries, that is multidimensional poverty. Let's talk about that. Nepal faces a myriad challenges in all walks of life. Who would know this better than the lower rungs of the Nepali society that has to struggle every day to make the ends meet? Who would know about this disease than the lesser mortals that constitute a silent majority? A majority of mouths, but with a barely audible voice in matters that affect them the most. Indeed, they are seldom heard during such rare occasions as election campaigns. Even if they are heard, they are quickly forgotten. That is, till the next elections. Poverty, which comes in almost every imaginable form and shape, whether it's in terms of income, the level of income, job opportunities, educational opportunities, opportunities for growth or expansion. This poverty is one such challenge facing the country in general and the bottom rung, the lesser mortals in particular. A recent report has highlighted this challenge facing Nepal once again. The report is titled Nepal Multidimensional Poverty Index 2021 Analysis Towards Action. This report points that in 2019, 17.4% of Nepalese were multidimensionally poor. Just under 5 million persons, that's a huge number, isn't it? And the multidimensional poverty index, that is MPI, stood at 0.074%. First of all, let's talk a bit about this MPI, what this concept is, and what it means for Nepal. For one thing, MPI is not just one fancy development jargon. What is it then? Is it some high sounding term that adds insult to injury, adds more poverty to the back-breaking load of penury? Let's return to the report. This report that I was talking about, it defines MPI as a technically rigorous measure of poverty of national and provincial policy priorities towards poverty reduction in Nepal. In short, it just dwells on efforts to reduce poverty at the regional level and national level, provincial level, and national level through policy intervention. Isn't it quite an impressive definition? Well, it is. Why would not it be? After all, this report, this voluminous work, is the work of such prestigious authors as the Oxford Policy and Human Development Institute, OPHI, that is, United Nations Development Programme, and the United Nations Children's Fund. This report has obtained data from none other than Nepal Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey 2019, that is NMICS 2019 in short, and it's a work. This survey is a work of the Central Bureau of Statistics. Across indicators for the report, the highest number of people were deprived in housing materials, clean cooking fuel, years of schooling, assets, and nutrition. Considering the indicator weights, years of schooling and nutritional deprivations contributed most to ongoing multidimensional poverty in Nepal. It means that all those efforts aimed at increasing the school enrollment rate as well as improving the condition of nutrition among women and children in particular through several measures like midday meals for children, that has not been quite effective, to say the least. The urban-rural divide also figures in the report. The rural lot, as we know it, is on the receiving end, and as per the report, 28% of rural dwellers are MPI poor compared to 12.3% in urban areas. What's more, over half of Nepal's poor population live in rural areas. That means the major thrust of our policy intervention should be in uplifting the condition of people living in rural areas of the country. Province-wise, the report paints a grim picture of the peripheries, while all seems to be well with the center and the semi-peripheries. Across provinces, Karnali province had the highest MPI poor, that is 39% of the people, followed by 25.3% in Sudur Paschim province and 24.2% in province 2. In Gandaki province, 9.6% of people were multidimensionally poor, while the lowest level and incidence of poverty were found in Bagmati province. It had an incidence of nearly 7.0%, one-sixth of the incidence in one-sixth of the incidence of poverty in Karnali province. Alarmingly, children still remained the poorest age group. The report pointed that over 1 in 5 children were still poor, that is 2.2 million children. That is not a small number. This report has disaggregated children in two age groups, that is, children between 0 to and 17 years of age and adult population, that is above 18 years of age. In Nepal, children represent nearly 35% of the population. Out of 44% who are poor, 35% are children. As per this report, it states that 21.8% of all children were living in multidimensional poverty as compared to 15.1% of the total population of the country. This report has broken down this age group of children between two subcategories, that is early childhood aged 0 to 9 years, and then adolescents aged 10 to 17 years. Of the households living with a child 10 years of age, the MPI for these households was 0.124%, the incidence of poverty of 27.8%, and an intensity of 44.5%. By contrast, the MPI for households living with an adolescent was 0.064%, with an incidence of poverty of 14.9% and an intensity of 43.0%. Gender-wise, the report showed the female population was faring worse in terms of poverty than the male population. It stated that the incidence of multidimensional poverty amongst the male population, that is comprising 47.3% of the total population, the male population comprises 47.3% of the total population of Nepal. Poverty among male population stood at 14.3%, and among the female population it stood at 15.1%. The female population comprises 52.7% of Nepal's total population. This report has also drawn attention towards MPI, that is Multidimensional Poverty Index, in families where one of its members has a disability. As per the report, nearly 3.2% of the population lived in a household where one of its members had a disability. This report found MPI for these households to be a bit higher than the national average at 0.083%, with an incidence of poverty of 18.3% and an intensity of 45.5%. The report has alarmed that these households may indeed experience large levels of deprivations. Though prepared using 2019 NMICS data that predated the coronavirus pandemic, this report has also probed into and factored in pandemic-related deprivations using NMICS dataset. NMICS is Nepal Multiple Indicator Census Survey. Despite these figures, it's not all doom and gloom for Nepal. The report points that Nepal has made significant progress in reducing MPI. In terms of poverty trends, the incidence of multidimensional poverty nationally fell from 30.1% in 2014 to 17.4% in 2019. In 2019, the MPI was 0.074%. This meant that 3.1 million people left poverty in 5 years. That's no mean feat for an ill-prepared and instability-plagued country, an ill-governed country like Nepal. The intensity of multidimensional poverty also significantly decreased from 44.2% to 42.5% during this period. Nepal can of course draw solace from the fact that its MPI matched the MPI of Botswana in 2015-16. That was one of the least poor countries in sub-Saharan Africa and was similar to that of Nicaragua in 2011-12 in Latin America, and just a little less poor than Kiribati in 2018-19. Kiribati is in East Asia and the Pacific region. As per the report, Nepal's 2019 MPI value was 0.074%. It was below Bangladesh's 2019 MPI of 0.104%, and it was definitely lower than the MPI values for all South African countries except the Maldives. These figures from afar and the extended neighborhood may put a bomb on Nepal's hot pride as a not so rich country. But deeper troubles are not that far for an ill-prepared country like Nepal. The poverty scenario is likely to worsen further amid rising inflation resulting from the Russia-Ukraine war in one of the world's major oil and natural gas producing regions that also happens to be a huge grain basket. The prices of food will increase, the prices of grains, as well as fuel, diesel, petrol, and natural gas are bound to increase further, and this means the purchasing power of the Nepalis will just go down. Reports also point that the global economic depression is around the corner. It will be a serious slump. Several reports point at this oncoming slump, and this Russia-Ukraine war is hastening that slump further, as per the reports. For Nepal, the immediate casualty may be the 15th Development Plan's goal of reducing MPI to 11.5% from a whopping 28.6%. In such a crisis situation, Nepal's political leadership cannot and shall not remain complacent. The onus is also on the people themselves to read and reread election manifestos of different political actors and ask them some tough questions related to the country in general and the national economy in particular, as these people, these political parties and their candidates come asking for votes. As they come asking for votes to grab power in the center and in the provinces. And after voting these actors, these political parties to power, the people should see to it that these actors, these leaders, these political parties, they walk the talk. They deliver on the promises they make while seeking votes. As someone rightly said, eternal vigilance is the price of democracy. With this remark, I wrap up this edition of Soft Talk. We request you to subscribe to the channel, comment on our presentation, and support this initiative towards citizen journalism. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.